Psycho-cybernetic mechanisms. Sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie, but it's actually the reason why you are not accomplishing the things that you want to accomplish in your life, why you always feel stuck, and why anytime you start to accelerate, some crazy shit always happens and your car breaks down or you happen to get injured or life falls apart and it sends you spiraling right back to exactly where you've always been. A psycho-cybernetic mechanism, that's a real medical term, by the way, in a book written by Maxwell Maltz. He's a former plastic surgeon who became a psychologist or a psychiatrist because he noticed that when he would give surgery to people, some of them would recognize a massive difference and their lives would change, and he wouldn't really see a difference in them. And in others, he would see this amazing physical difference, but they would not see it themselves. So it led him to investigate what was going on in the human brain that led to these types of conditions. And so this is something that I myself have been struggling with my entire life, especially recently, and that's why I want to talk to you about it here today. So your current belief system is a psycho-cybernetic mechanism, and a psycho-cybernetic mechanism is nothing more than a series of networks in your brain that are designed to keep you on course with you. Now, naturally, what that means is that it's survival-based. We're always going to default to the easiest path, the most energy conservation, the thing that we know is going to be safest. And so even if you're not satisfied with where you're at in life right now, your unconscious primitive part of your brain, your psycho-cybernetic mechanism, is set to 70 degrees because you're not in danger, you're not dying, even though life might be stressful, maybe you have debt piling up. Realistically, right now, in this moment, you are not dying. You can go home and watch Pornhub and smoke weed and drink beer and watch the ball game. You can do all the same dumb shit that you always do with your life because you're not in a true state of survival. And since you are not in a true state of survival, your unconscious brain, your psycho-cybernetic mechanism, your thermostat, if you will, is going to be set at 70 degrees, and it's always going to try to keep you there until you're in an actual life-threatening situation, which is why so many people always wait until life is truly completely collapsed before they make some sort of great life change, because until your back's against the wall, your unconscious brain knows that you're going to be fine. Might not be happy, but it doesn't care. All it cares about is that default to survivalism. So your psycho-cybernetic mechanism can be likened to a thermostat, which is based and programmed solely off of your unconscious primitive part of your brain's need for survival. So in this instance, we're going to say that that is set at 70 degrees. This is your current belief system. I'll never be a millionaire, or I'll never be jacked, or I'll never be capable of defending myself against a violent criminal. Whatever it is in life, I can never start my own company. That is all subject here to your current belief system. So this is what happens. Whenever we start to find ourselves actually accelerating a little bit, and we finally start to get ourselves moving upwards, or a 71 degree or a 72 degree, well, what happens in your home when that thermostat is set to 70? It's immediately going to bump you back down. And we're going to talk about how that happens here in just a moment. But just know that internal workings in your brain are purposefully sabotaging the things that you have elevating your life just to bring you right back down to 70. However, the same exists for whenever you find yourself in a slump. If you're behaving in a certain way that is lessening your quality of life, your standard of life, then that survivalist part of your brain, your psycho-cybernetic mechanism, is going to kick back in and it's going to bump you up to a 70. So whenever you find yourself getting in too much debt, then you find a way to pay it off a little bit. Whenever you find yourself freaking out about the fact that you are in horrible physical shape, you'll work out just enough to get yourself right back to where you're comfortable, and then you'll continue on with the same patterns and cycles of behavior as you had always before. Now, how does this happen? So here we have a picture. This is our body. This is our mind, not the brain, but the mind. And what I'm going to break down for you is a little bit of a diagram here as to what exactly goes on. So outside, we have the environment, the external world. And within ourselves, we have 5 senses. We'll probably have more than that, but let's just keep it simple. We're not going to get existential. 5 senses. Smell, touch, taste, hear, and feel. Well, smell, touch, taste, hear. Smell, touch, taste, hear, see. Yeah. So, when we receive information from the external world, regardless of what that information is, it's an experience. And that experience gets registered by each of these senses. And then when it gets registered by those senses, it goes into what's known as the conscious part of our brain. That's this top part here, the conscious part of our brain. We consciously have the experience. Well, what happens afterwards is that that experience gets registered as a series of neural networks in our brain, and it gets programmed down into the subconscious. And in the subconscious is where these experiences rest. And the reason why our brain moves information from the conscious down to the subconscious goes back to that survivalism, that energy conservation. It causes our body to burn a lot of calories to think consciously. However, to think subconsciously, in other words, to not really think at all, that's behavioral patterns, it solidifies that neural network and it operates like a computer operating system does, just on automatic in the background, and you don't have to consciously think about it. It burns less calories. Is the little sound bar going off on that thing? All right, cool, never mind. So when it gets programmed into the subconscious here, now that is what affects our behaviors. Our subconscious programming is our habitual thought processes, our habitual self-talk, our habitual physical behaviors, because the things that we experience affect the way that we feel. The way that we feel, first and foremost, affects our thoughts. Our thoughts then therefore affect the way that we feel, and then our feelings affect the way that we therefore behave. And the way that we behave creates our immediate external what? You've guessed it, environment. So our environment influences the experiences that we have, which affects the information that we develop in our conscious mind, which then therefore is programmed and stored within the subconscious, which has the effect of outward bodily action, which in the end produces our results in life. So, how is all this tied in together with the psychocybernetic mechanism within your brain? If you view yourself, if you talk to yourself regularly, every single day of your life, if the thoughts that you have are the same majority of the thoughts that you've had for years and years now about who you are, what you're supposed to look like, the car you're supposed to drive, the way that you carry yourself, the way that you speak, what your job's supposed to look like, the most amount of money that you can make, the type of partner you're supposed to have, the relationships that you maintain and keep, how honest you are, how much integrity you have, whether or not you keep your word or follow through on the things that you say you're going to do. All of this collectively is greatly influenced by our environment. And that is picked up within our senses, and as we repeat it over and over again, it gets programmed into that subconscious. Once it's programmed into the subconscious, you're no longer thinking about the self-talk, you're no longer thinking about your behaviors, and so therefore, you're technically not thinking of your results. They're just happening. And so when you start to consciously intervene against that default thought process, otherwise known as a paradigm, well, your results begin to push you up towards a higher degree person. But if you are not consciously aware of the fact that you're reaching this 72-degree level, what's going to happen? You're going to naturally default back because your brain here is saying, hey, we don't know what's going on, we know things are changing, and we don't understand change. Okay, change means that we might not survive. We might have to burn more energy. We might have to exert more calories, and we don't enjoy that. So let's start to go ahead and dig into all these negative behavioral patterns in the subconscious, produce it in a bodily action, and then therefore we could negatively influence the results, and now we could drag you right back down to being a 68, 69 degree, or not too low, but right back to that original belief system, 70 degrees, that you think you're worthy of. And this has to do with your parents, the conditioning you had growing up as a child, the neighborhood you grew up in, the books that you've read, the things that you've all experienced in your environment as a human being. That's going to influence and affect the way that you negatively or positively view yourself as a human being, as a man or as a woman. So what can we do when we start reaching this plateau right here, which this is something I've been dealing with lately? Physical fitness has always been a big thing for me, but I've never been able to push myself beyond a certain limitation, my 72 degrees. Now I'm right at the cusp of pushing myself beyond that 72 degrees, and what do you know? My kid's staying up extra late, I'm extra tired, I just feel weak, I don't feel like working out extra, more, which is why discipline is so important. That when you set a goal, when you are sober of mind, and by sober of mind I mean not drunk off of the exhaustion of the endurance required in order to accomplish said goal, but when you set a goal and the benchmarks needed to get there, you say, hey, I need to work out if I want to reach my goal. So no matter how tired you are, you must continue to work out. No matter what, that right there is the key factor of discipline, ladies and gentlemen. And how do you maintain discipline? By having a well-defined series of benchmarks that you need to hit in order to reach that goal. That way, whenever you are struggling with the exhaustion, struggling with the scheduling, struggling with your inability to grasp the fact that you're going to become a 73-degreer, take yourself up to that next new level, those new heights. If you don't have these benchmarks in place, then you're just a ship wandering throughout the ocean without a rudder, without a captain. And so, how can we ensure with that discipline that we are doing everything we possibly can in order to get to where we need to go? So, here we have what's known as the frequency chart for human emotions. And you can see down here at the bottom, you have very low frequency, negative energy. Up here you have high frequency, high energy. Now, where do we automatically go as human beings? We always default back down into the Now, where do we go as human beings? We always default down here into the negative vibrations. Why? Because our brain has the survivalist priorities. Things like shame for feeling a certain way or doing something, guilt, apathy, grief, fear. Fear, notice how that right there is the gateway to all negative energies, negative emotions, because your emotions create a neurochemical disposition in your body, which is the secretion of hormones and endorphins that are directly correlated with how you feel, which is directly correlated with the energy that you have, which is directly correlated with the amount and the frequency of skin cells that you are shedding at any given point in time. And Simeon Kirlian, I think his name was, the old Soviet photographer, first discovered this in like the early 1900s when he realized he was capable of photographing that skin cell off-put, degeneration, and how it was directly correlated with how somebody was feeling. So, whenever you find yourself getting up in the energy levels, you are also finding yourself coming up towards that next level of greatness. However, your psycho-cybernetic mechanism kicks in, and what does it do? It starts to shoot you right down. When you start to find yourself feeling prideful, when you start to finally feel a little bit courageous, it pushes you down, and then you hit the anger, and then from anger you hit desire again because you were so close, and from desire you hit fear, so forth and so forth and so forth, and so you start to spiral back downwards here into the negative frequencies. So, what can we do to ensure that as we're reaching that 71 degrees, 72 degrees, that we can continue to push ourselves up? How could we be more courageous? How could we be more willing and accept the certain things that are within our life so we can begin to change them? Well, this is where something like physical exercise, and internal self-talk and belief system is so absolutely important. So whenever you find yourself elevating towards the 73 degrees, And all of a sudden, things start to fall apart in your life. You maintain the discipline, and then you hit the benchmarks that you need. You do not falter, you do not deviate from the set plan that you have scheduled. And when you feel like it, what you need to do is get into physical exercise. When you get into physical exercise, it creates the neurochemical disposition in your body that's associated with high frequency. That's why when people work out, they feel so good, is because it's releasing the hormones, it's releasing the endorphins. It's the only way that you could immediately begin to change your mental and emotional state is by changing drastically your physical state. That's why people like Tony Robbins and Ed Mylett have like trampolines and cold plunges and shit, because it's proven and it works. And I'm living proof of it as well, because I was going to blow my own fucking brains out. Not anymore. I can never even go back to that, because I've discovered how to change my mind, how to reprogram myself. So you stay disciplined by hitting the benchmarks. You use physical fitness as a means of elevating that neurochemical disposition in your body and ultimately your vibrational frequency. When you have an elevated vibrational frequency, that allows you to blow past this current setting within your psycho-cybernetic mechanism. And once you blow past that setting, due to the experiences that you're having in your environment, the thoughts that you are consciously having that are programming your subconscious, which affects your behaviors, which is directly correlated with your results, and it's all high energy and frequency, and you blow past that limiting threshold, now your new belief system, your new standard, is going to be a different temperature. In this case, we'll say 75 degrees. Now you have a new psycho-cybernetic mechanism set at 75 degrees. Your low will be 73, and then your high will be 77. And the cycle continues to repeat itself. There's also a couple of other things that you could do in terms of your environment, your external environment, that can greatly influence the things that you're perceiving in life, and that is the people you hang around with. You're the sum total of the 5 people you hang out with. 5 millionaires should be the 6th, 5 alcoholics should be the 6th, etc., etc. So there are other means and ways of also maximizing the influence that we have, but I always like to start with the self, because in the end, your life is your fault, whether that's good or bad. There's nobody else to blame. There's nobody else that you could lay things on other than you. It doesn't matter what's happened to you. It's your fault. If a meteor fell out of the sky and killed my family, I would take 100% sole responsibility for that. I would say that it's my fault. Doesn't mean that I wouldn't sue NASA necessarily, just using a fucking example here. But my point is that everything is directly correlated with our behaviors. Our life is a reflection of our behaviors. We're looking in the mirror at ourselves at the way that we see the world. And the only way that we could truly influence that is by starting with ourselves, understanding that our environment and our conditioning has had an impact on us, and it does, which is why I don't check my phone first thing in the morning, which is why I don't watch the news. I only watch good positive things like John Asseroff or Bob Proctor, Earl Nightingale. And that external information is going to influence my conscious mind, and then my subconscious mind, and my behaviors, and then my results. And then my results are going to directly affect who I am in this life and in this world and the impact that I'm trying to have. And that's what's going to allow me to blow past the next limiting level, the ceiling, the glass ceiling that I put on myself. Whenever you find yourself struggling to be a better version of you, ladies and gents, you need to ask yourself, are you staying disciplined and hitting the benchmarks of this goal that you set for yourself? Do you even have a goal? Most people don't. I didn't for years. And if you are hitting those benchmarks, but you still find yourself struggling here at the top, you've got to find other people to get around who are already operating on this level or a much higher level, because that is how you get elevated and amplified into the next realm of greatness. So psycho-cybernetic mechanism is your own conditions, your own belief systems, your paradigm into yourself and who you are and what you are worthy of. Everybody can change. That's the beautiful thing about being a human. But you need to know what to do in order to change appropriately. And if you want help with that, then I'm here for you. Reach out, join Lethality University. I base everything first and foremost off security. You have to know how to defend yourself first and foremost in order to secure yourself, and then begin to work on yourself and build your own internal community, if you will. All right, everybody, my name is Joe Malone. I'm a former MARSOC Marine, and it's my mission in life to teach people how to protect, preserve life, and then to help one another. Take care.